Know how to turn on this large screen?
Yeah, there's a button right here where it's.
Oh, hey.
What Lex? Just one button. Yeah. There you go. Great.
It's Ryan, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, sir.
And we've got Ableton open. Yeah, let's do. Screen recording. Nope.
Playing command on the turn. There until. And then until the 8 and then the 8. The 8 for 3 But you find like your gates? Yeah.
Or if that's not working because I plugged into the screen.
Well, so we're gonna put that. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, no, great one. Just this sort of one, but you like. Actually, what do you do? Where do you end up going for? They go for okay,
So we start sharing screen. There's a few, there was that pro setting. All right, so we've got original sound for musicians, echo cancellation, stereo audio, and we've got share.
How long does it seem like do that?
Share sound. We'll do stereo. I'm sharing the Ableton window. Okay. Testing, testing. Is this working? Check, check, check. Volume up, volume down. Up.
Once I done that.
Check, 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 check. Testing, testing, testing. Testing, testing. All right. Ryan, can you hear me? Thumbs up, thumbs down, volume up, volume down. You can hear me? Great. I was running on battery. You want to have a power supply? It's been one of those weeks. You have one? Well, yeah, we have one. Okay, thank you. Oh, great. All right, powered up. And I want to change what I'm sharing on the screen. I want to share the entire screen. Share desktop audio. Let's redo. Share. Okay. All right, let's get started. So today's, this would be Ableton, the second Ableton lesson, and the focus is sounds from space. Did everyone get the email I sent out? It was just about a half hour ago, but it had some promo codes for an iOS or iPad app. Check your email and we can walk through that process.
Yeah.
Okay. I can walk you through that process a bit. So this is an app originally I built as a prototype in 2021. I was working with a company that built a sound bed. So a lot of the information was haptic. So you'd have headphones and then these rumble packs that you'd feel up and down your body as you lie down on the surface. And we were looking at how to, oops, hold on. We were looking at how to bring information. Yes. We wanted to bring information from essentially the planet. A number of the people I was working with were interested in the Schumann resonance, which is about a 7 hertz oscillation. It varies a bit because everything in nature has fluctuation, but it's generally considered around 7 hertz, and it's kind of described in a new agey way as the heartbeat of the planet. And 7 hertz as an oscillation is similar to a theta state in our brains. And that is a hypnotic state. It's this dreamy, creative, cozy, very safe space in our brain. And it's what you hit right before you fall asleep. So right now we're mostly, and I'll cover this more on Friday too, but mostly right now we're in a beta state. So beta waves are prominent. And that means we're learning, we're focusing, our eyes are open, we're engaging with the world. If we were to close our eyes and do a meditation for a bit, our alpha waves would become dominant. And if we meditate for a longer period of time and you start falling asleep in your meditation, that's theta. And you start to have these dream flashes, these dream blooms come up as you're dipping into theta. And it's where people go when they are being hypnotized or deeper forms of meditation get down into theta. So theta is about 7 hertz. And that's similar to this Schumann resonance that my creative partners were interested in back in 2020. So the easiest way, yes, more people, if you see someone say that they want to get in, just flag me down so I keep letting people into the Zoom room. So the easiest way to download the app is first to download it onto an iPhone or iPad. And then once it's installed there, it installs on your Mac more easily. I couldn't figure out a way to get it to install onto the Mac directly. It's just a weird thing with the App Store. So if you open up the App Store in your phone, if you tap your profile photo in the upper corner, you'll get this redeem gift card or code. And then that link I sent out earlier has a bunch of promo codes. And so that allows you to install it. Once it's installed, does anyone need help with getting it installed on their phone or device? Raise your hand if you need help. Okay. And then once it's installed on the Mac, or I'm sorry, once it's installed on your phone, you can open App Store on your Mac and go to your profile in the lower left corner. And then it'll show Mac apps and iPhone and iPad apps. And if you click on iPhone and iPad apps, the new Aurora app that you just download onto your phone will show up on your Mac. I don't have a build for PC, so this will be a conceptual. I'm the Ableton. You have a iPhone?
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe it feeds in. I've had trouble getting the MIDI signal, but if you've done it before, I'm just illiterate with PCs. Okay. I'm sure PCs can receive a MIDI device from
Mac OS run iPhone.
there's a version called Mac Catalyst. So you develop it in iOS and you can export it to work on Mac as well. But the weird workaround is that you have to install it on the phone first and then install it on the Mac. It seems that the code bases for Mac OS and iOS are slowly merging and they're almost there. And so they've got these bridging softwares, and one is called Mac Catalyst, which is something I use quite a bit for coding. Let me see if there's any questions in Zoom. Did I just, are my Zoom people there? Let's see, chat. Okay, looks fine. Adjustments. Great. So I'm doing some research downstairs. My computer is hooked up into 6 EEGs and a heart rate monitor and collecting data from people. I'm working with Department of Psychology and Tisch as this collaborative research. So my computer is downstairs is powering that, and I'm using my collaborator's laptop. And her OS X is too old to install this MIDI app. So I'll be showing you on my phone, which is ridiculous. I'm trying to get a screen share. And it was working, but I think it stopped working as soon as I plugged it into the screen over here. I don't know what the workaround is for that. If anyone's extremely savvy with getting iPhone to show up on.
Click the source down
And what it worked earlier when I chose, because I've got it on my phone here. I'll try restarting QuickTime. And I do movie recording.
You're doing okay.
Hey, this might be different. This is what was working last time. And then go down to 13M. Come on. Hey, great. All right. So that's working. Does anyone need more time getting installed? Okay. Oh, no, that's fine. That's fine. And what we'll do is we'll first go through a speculative sound design exercise, and then we'll get into the tech. So go ahead and pull out either pen and paper or a notepad, just something where you can jot down numbers. It'll be multiple questions. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the answers first, and then I'll reveal the questions after you've chosen your favorite answers. It's kind of a strange way to do it, but I promise it'll work out. And so under number 1, this is question 1. Which of these is the most, just whatever piques your interest, go ahead and just choose whatever answer and jot it down. And this will be part of a speculative design. I'll read them as well. So question 1, the answers, and we'll learn what the actual question is later. The answers are circular, rapid, slow, or reverse. So whichever of those terms are the most intriguing to you, just put number 1 and then jot that down. Anyone need more time for question 1? Raise your hand if you need more time. All right. Question 2. Again, the question will come later, so choose whatever answer is most intriguing to you. Dense, thin, fluid, or vacuum? Question 3. Choose your favorite. Touch, thought, light pulses, or spoken? Fourth question. Choose your favorite answer. Electromagnetic, infrasonic, ultrasonic, vibration, or light patterns? Question 5, choose your favorite answer. Rising, sustaining, decaying, or barely anything. There's 8 total. We're almost there. Question 6, choose your favorite answer. Robots, plants, animals, or aliens. I'm seeing some pensive looks. Let me check the Zoom chat, see if there's anything. All good. Question 7, choose your favorite answer. Unity, local, semi-functional, or conflict. And then the last question, choose your favorite answer. 1 week, 1 year, 100 years, or 1,000 years.
Yeah, that's one.
Back to question 1,
Yeah,
sure.
it took me a minute to figure out. Okay.
That's fine. It's strange to answer a question without knowing what it is. It's like a bad interrogation. Question 1 is circular, rapid, slow, or reverse. Anyone else need to hit another question? Yes. Yeah, sure. Thank you, Voyu. All right, so we've got those questions. Let's make sure she gets started so Voyu can be a part of this. All right, so we've answered these questions. The result is that you made your own alien planet. And it's a different planet in a different universe, and it has different physics. So let's review the questions so you can see the details of this. So you've already chosen all the attributes of this planet. You just don't know what attribute is what yet. So question 1, how does time pass? So does time go in a circular fashion? Does it move more rapidly than time on Earth? Is it slower than time on Earth? Or is it in reverse? And again, these are just concepts to help you start thinking about how to design as if it were a different planet. Question 2, what's the composition of the atmosphere? Is it denser than ours, thinner than ours, a fluid like water, or a complete vacuum? And the reason that we're developing these attributes is we want to start thinking about how does sound and music exist in this new place? Next question is, how do the inhabitants speak? Do they speak through touch, through thought, through light pulses, or through spoken language? Question 4, how is their music transmitted? Is it through electromagnetics, using infrasonic or ultrasonic frequency ranges, meaning below what we can hear as humans or above what we can hear as humans? Is their music transmitted through vibrations or through light patterns? Question 5, what is the condition of their civilization? So I'll give you a context of what music might mean in this other culture. Is there civilization on the rise? Is it plateauing where it's sustaining itself? Is it decaying? Or is there barely any inhabitants on the planet at all? So it can give you a sense of the emotion, the psychology, the culture of this planet that you're designing a sound for. Question 6, who are they most integrated with? So are they working with robots, cyborgs, and AI systems? Are they working telepathically and in harmony with plants and plant systems? Are they telepathic and in harmony with animals and animal systems? Or they share the planet with many types of aliens from other planets? So it gives you a sense of what music and what this communication system of sound needs to be of the inhabitants and these other creatures on this planet. And then question 7, how is society structured? So is there global unity where all the species work together in harmony? Or is it local autonomous cultures isolated from other cultures in the planet? Is it stressful, semi-functional, that's sort of just ambling along? Or is it an active conflict within the community and other communities, like a war scenario? So again, this gives you a context of what sound and music might mean on this speculative planet that you're creating. And then the last question is, what is their lifespan? So do the inhabitants of this planet you've created, do they live for a week, a year, 100 years, or 1,000 years? So for example, if a creature lived for 1,000 years, their idea of a song might last longer than if they lived for a week. So if you conceive of what this sound that you may make, what chunk of their life is it going to take for them to hear it? So you create a different planet with a different experience of time. It's a different atmosphere that would change how sound travels. So here on Earth, we need a physical medium for sound to travel. So if we were in space, this microphone and these speakers wouldn't work because sound waves, they're physical, they're compression waves, and they need a medium to travel through in order to get to its intended source. Light is different. Light is electromagnetic, and it can travel. It doesn't need that same medium. It can travel through space. That's why we can see stars, but we don't hear stars. We don't hear sounds coming from other planets, but we see light coming from other planets. So if you're in a different planet with a different atmosphere, if it's thicker, sound may move in a slower pace. If it's thinner, sound may go faster, or maybe it's the other way around. I dropped out of physics class. Also, we create a planet with a different way of speaking. So what is the relationship between the way I speak in a language and the music that I make? In terms of the rhythm of the sound, the tempo of the sound. Also, we look at a planet with a different form of music transmission. And let me remember what those options were. That was 4. So is sound or music type of content, is it electromagnetic like light? Or is it in those upper and lower ranges that are beyond our capacity? Does it move through vibration or light patterns? There's a different civilization with a particular state of health. There's a society integrated with other beings. So is this music for plants? Anyone's ever used something like MIDI sprout or plant wave, where you clip a little electrode on a plant and it makes its own music? I had a friend in Berlin who used a series of those. It was a year-long residency where he paired a human musician with a particular plant in his garden, and the human musician and the plant would hang out once a week for a year. So they hung out 52 times, and the musician would practice and like play music for the plant. And the final show is, they put the electrodes in the plant and they had the human do a duet together. And so that's specifically like the intended audience was a plant. And that's different than if your intended audience was a dance floor or like a folk music club. The planet has a society integrated with other beings. It's structured around a set of principles, and then overall sense of how much time each inhabitant has. So think about all these different conditions that you've made for your specific planet, and just keep this in mind as a creative lens, if you wish, when we start exploring what sounds to choose. And the reason I do these speculative designs is that typically, when people approach music, they're just imitating, which is fine. They're imitating their favorite artist, their favorite producer. They hear music that they like, and they're like, how do I make that? And that's something as a musician you can do outside of art school as much as you want. One of the gifts of being in art school is, how do I change my lens? How do I shift my perspective to make music in a different way? And that's what's great about these spaces, is that this type of design hopefully opens a different part of your creativity, instead of thinking, how do I make music that will get on a record label or get likes or sound good in a 15-second clip? Like, you can put all that aside and think, okay, I've got this new audience. You know, maybe I've got this planet that time is in reverse, and it's a bunch of plants and they talk to each other through pulses. What's that sound like? And the sounds you choose and the composition you choose may be different than if you're thinking, I want to make a cool song that people like. Any questions about that? Does anyone want to share what the planet they developed and their kind of sense that's coming up? I'm seeing a smile here. Do you want to describe?
It's natural, you probably know him, natural sounds like crickets.
Yeah.
Then he looks at the way they get synthesized, he changes the parameters, so you get this like, it's the same idea, but it's like imagine you know, an insect that develops in like a different way, so it gets like this kind of feels natural, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
So I don't know, it's like reminded me of
So he's able to emulate with a synthesizer how crickets make sound and then tweak that.
Yeah, mix down the waveform and see
Studies
like,
it.
Sees like the frequencies that they like cricket, they're like do the little
Yeah.
things. And then it changes the parameters, so it gets like these weird, sounds like, yeah, like aliens.
That's great.
It's really cool, yeah.
You had your hand up?
Related to that,
Yeah, please. Any idea it brings up is great.
whole thing that I've played, where you develop alien creatures.
Yeah.
And then everybody shares their favorite music, or music that they associate strongly with the memory.
Yeah.
And you shuffle the playlist of that, and everyone listens to like 30 seconds to a minute of your song, and then you share your memory. And then we go back to playing these aliens, and how the aliens that we created understood the human music and the human story that just came, which is a great, like, it's a great storytelling and getting to know each other in certain situation. But also like thinking about how these gravity-less beings would have experienced this song and what very strange things they get an idea. Like, we had a group that came up with you fall in love and you break up, so gravity must be love.
Wow.
And thinking about music, in any case, it seemed like an interesting start to this, like, because you get used to thinking about a different creature's understanding of music.
Yep.
Before like making someone else's music.
That's great. And if you think about, you know, we can only hear from about 20 hertz, which is like low sub bass. There's a like even lower, 20 hertz. If you go lower than that, I mean, you feel it impacts your body as these huge bass waves are hitting your body. But you stop being able to hear below that. And then the top of our hearing, when your hearing's in peak condition, is like 20,000 hertz. And so that's the highest pitch, just there. And then you stop hearing it. It doesn't mean that sound isn't there anymore. You know, it's a fascinating phenomenon of there are still waves, there are these bass waves that we feel and can pass through material, but we can't hear it. There was this really interesting research study. It was at the Sonar Festival, which is a music festival. I think it's in Spain, Barcelona. I might be wrong. Is that yes? Great. And there's a group, I'm a big fan of them. They're called Orphix. They're a Canadian duo. They work a lot with modular, and they had a modular piece that could produce sounds below 20 hertz. And they had some sort of special sound system to be able to pump out that sub-auditory bass and hit the crowd with it. And what they were studying was, do people dance more if they added that the same rhythm in these sub basses that you can't hear, but you can feel versus not having them. And so they did a period of time where they didn't have that low sub bass, but it was still dance music. And then they had the period of time where that extra entrainment, that extra signal to move coming below the auditory level was hitting people's bodies, and they found that people do dance more. So even though you can't hear it, those waves still impact us, particularly those low bass waves. When they hit your body, all your water molecules just push. And so that's why when you have a beat on a dance floor, people tend to sync up. I mean, of course, you can dance crazy and do whatever you want, but in general, everyone's kind of bobbing and moving at the same rhythms because everyone's receiving the same entrainment, the same rhythmic signal. This is how you move. This is how you move. This is how you move. And that's the power of entrainment in sound, is those oscillations or those tempos you choose are entering people's bodies and telling them and training their brains and their bodies what rhythm to act. Any questions about that? All right, anyone else want to share their planet? If you're online, you can type a little comment about your planet. Any, like, if your planet had an elevator pitch, what would it be? Voyo? Your planet. I'd love to hear about your planet.
It's a circle.
Circular time
Fluid. Inhabitants communicate by touch.
by touch. Yeah,
Vibration.
nice. That fits.
Rising.
Rising society. Yeah.
Yes. And share the planet with aliens.
Yep. Share a planet with aliens. Unity. Society. 1,000 years is the lifespan. Hey, there you go. Transhumanism. Right. Thank you. Let's next take a look. Let's get into Ableton. So I'm gonna, Ryan shared circular, vacuum, light pulses, electromagnetic, decaying, robots, semi-functional, 1 year. I like that. It gives a sense of a more dystopian, we've got robots, electromagnetic communication. So even though you don't know the questions beforehand, you can see how your creative vision comes out in the words that you're drawn to. And so you've created this world. This method is a bit subconscious because you're choosing the answers before you know the questions. Thank you, Ryan. So in Ableton, what I usually do is I go to instruments, and these are all MIDI instruments. They're essentially synthesizers. And you can do some searches. You know, let's do a search for space. And as you open up these caret icons, most of them look like they're in this category of ambient and evolving. So let me check this. I'm going to lower the sound just to make sure it's not too loud. So this one's called Multitude of Space. When I click it, I should get a preview because I've selected this blue icon in the lower left, which is headphones. Jay is coming in. It's moving. It's a spacey sound. That sound. Flip. Sometimes they're under multiple cameras, but that's right down to wave tables. There's other sounds. A lot of the ambient involving synths, it's fairly self-describing, but if you hold a key on it, it'll automatically have these different fluctuations and changes. And so that's a fairly easy way to start constructing what feels like a rich atmosphere or something that has a lot of textures simultaneously. If you use some of the simpler synths, you can construct those your own, but that's a nice thing about having these pre-designed synths. It's a way to get started faster. something I often do with ambient sounds. So I'm going to drag this into, you can drag it into the gray area or over top another MIDI track. A lot of times I want a sound to play infinitely and to be an atmosphere. And then I modulate the sounds. So rather than playing a melody, I just want it to hold the note continuously. So this is something I use pretty often to create drones or atmosphere sounds. So I'm going to double click into this space and I'll open up the sheet music down here in the lower area. And just to be super basic, I'm going to do a C3. And I double clicked to create a note and I'm stretching the note by clicking and dragging. And with this, I'm going to shorten the loop. I'm grabbing the right handle on the loop and I'm making the loop tighter than the length of the note. So the note crosses over the threshold of the end of the loop. And in the front, I'm going to drag the loop handle in a little bit. So the entire note is within the loop. So it never hits the front and never hits the back. So if I did this right now, it wouldn't trigger because it isn't hitting the beginning of the note. So let's see what happens. So you see the playhead moving. It's moving along the note, but it's never triggering the beginning. So we have to do one extra thing to get it to trigger the beginning of a note at least once, and then it'll play infinitely. And in this handle on the left, which is the beginning of the loop bar, there's a little arrow underneath of it. Ableton is a lot of like little clicks and arrows, so that's just the world of Ableton. What I'm dragging back is the start playhead. And so it'll start here and then it'll loop here. Does that make sense? So there's a start, essentially it's starting here and then it's looping like that. Does that make sense? We'll hear it. So when I hit play, the playhead will trigger the beginning of this note I put in there, but then it'll loop continuously. So it's like holding a key on a keyboard and it will just sustain forever. Or for a long time. Let's try. It's not re-triggering. It's not like doom, doom, doom. It's as if I'm just playing it once and it's holding. Now, just so you can hear the difference, if I drag this inside the loop, we'll hear it play doom, 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 but it doesn't sustain in the same way. So let's listen to this. It's pretty similar, but it is re-triggering the envelope in the beginning again. Depends on the sound. This one's actually pretty good at a re-trigger. Okay, and then I'm naming this space loop. And you can rename things by Command R. So you can rename the columns or rename the little clips that you make. I'm going to double click the top of this column in order to open up the instrument that's in here. And with a lot of Ableton instruments, you get this host of macro controls. And so the person who designed this synth chose the most fun things to tweak and then put it in a knob on the top level. So I'm going to play this and just try turning these knobs and see what knobs sound interesting to me. It's a filter. And it kind of sounds underwater down here, which I kind of like. So let's say my atmosphere was a fluid atmosphere rather than a air atmosphere. I might use this fluid sound to emulate that fluid atmosphere. You hear that warbly? And try the resonance. Is everyone familiar with what resonance is? Like an EQ or a filter? Pop your hand up if you want me to cover resonance. Okay. So when you stack the same frequency on top of each other, and it usually happens when you have multiple sources of sound. So in a traditional band, let's say I've got multiple guitars, and those guitars are all playing the same frequency or same note. When those frequencies stack on top of each other, that amplification of that stacking is resonance. And if in filters and EQs, there's often a switch called Q or resonance. And I think Q, I remember looking this up a while ago. I think Q means quality, which it's like, how does that have to do anything with anything? But if someone on Zoom knows why it's called Q and I'm incorrect, please let me know. So you can turn it up, and so like a sound can become sharper and sharper as you increase the resonance. And what it's doing is it's amplifying the strength of that particular frequency. So becomes and the rest of the sound is there, but you get this resonance point just at the specific frequency. So as I turn up the resonance on this, it'll get sharper. If you turn the resonance down, it gets softer. I'm going to turn it to a different frequency, see if we can hear this resonance. So this is soft. So it gets sharper. It's creating resonance at that frequency. And what frequency? It's the frequency that's set in this frequency knob. You can get some pretty sharp sounds, and that's where you get some of those spacey, like old school, like sci-fi movie sounds. Let's turn the resonance down a little bit. Let's get back down to that watery sound. And we've got something called LFO amount. Turn it down. What's the difference you hear as LFO goes up and down? So this is LFO up. I'll turn it up a little bit. LFO down. And LFO down. Do you hear that movement that's happening when the LFO is up? Let me play it again. So LFO up, listen for a, it's like this movement that's happening as the synth is coming in. So an LFO, are people familiar with LFOs? Do you want me to give a 10-second description of LFOs? Okay, I'm seeing some nods. LFOs confused me for embarrassingly decades. So I thought the LFO itself was a sound because it's an oscillator. And it's called a low frequency oscillator. I just thought it meant it's like a really low sound. A term that makes more sense to me than LFO is like an animator. So it's a type of wave that will animate your sound. And so when the LFO is turned up, it has that animation of that bubbling sound as the synth is kicking in. So it usually takes another parameter and has it go through as if you were turning a knob constantly. The LFO turns the knob for you. So without an LFO, you would have, and then with an LFO, you would have, because it's modulating. It's changing it in an animation pattern. It can be a sine wave, it can be a square wave, it can be a randomizer. So you can choose what the LFO does, but it tweaks the sound. And so a lot of times to get these more sci-fi sounds, you can create a series of LFOs to like scramble the sound. Then we've got attack, release. So attack is how smoothly the sound comes in. Release is how long it takes to release. The delay is probably an effect. Let's check that. And then a phaser is a similar to a flanger, but it's a type of effect. So the thing I like the most here is the frequency filter. It often changes it the most. So what I'm going to do now is jump over to the app and grab data from the planet and have the planet tweak this. Instead of me using my mouse to change the knobs on this, electromagnetic activity from the planet is going to come into my computer and turn the knob. So let's go through. Any questions about this before we get to the planet becoming a co-author? What's that? Who has the copyright for the planet's music? I would say, I mean, I would give credit to the planet, but it does bring up, it brings up a great point because when you pull from other data sources, it starts to blur the lines of authorship. And that's something that really interests me about data sonification, is that maybe I build the structure that brings the data in, but I'm not the composer anymore. And so it takes a certain type of willingness as an artist to surrender total control over your composition to let these other sources come in, whether it's brain waves. I've often worked with dancers where they're wearing motion sensors and their movement is doing the composition. I'm not really the composer. They are. I might help set up the system and choose the sounds with them, but for me, it's one of the most beautiful ways to collaborate. It's actually quite difficult for me to sit down and work with other musicians because we have the same skill set. And so if I make a beat and then they make a beat, like whose beat do we choose? It becomes kind of this ego test of like, well, that synth is so I'm going to change your work. And then how do we, however, if I'm working with if I'm working with a dancer or if I'm working with someone that their art can become this data sonification, there's really clear roles and those types of collaborations can be quite beautiful. And with this, we're not collaborating with someone else's brain or someone else's body. We're collaborating with planet Earth. All right. So a few steps with Aurora. If you have it installed on your Mac, it will show up as Aurora once we get to the MIDI sources. However, since you can also run it from your phone, which is what I'm going to be doing. So I'm running it from my phone. It has to be physically plugged in to the computer. And the way that I send MIDI from an app on my phone, and this is any MIDI app, any music app on your phone that outputs MIDI, you can feed into Ableton. And it's through something called Audio MIDI Setup. And so when you open up Audio MIDI Setup, there's two different windows. There's MIDI Studio and there's Audio Studio. And for the way we're going to use the phone, we're looking at the window to look at the audio devices. And it probably shows your speakers. On mine, I'm plugged into the sound system here, so it shows external headphones because I'm plugged into the headphone jack. And if you have your phone or iPad plugged into your computer, it'll show up as an audio device. And again, it's physically plugged in. Any questions about that? Zoom audio on the Mac app?
I already downloaded it on my Mac.
You don't have to do this step, yeah. If you have the Mac app, we can do that next. So when it's plugged in, this button pops up and it says enable. So I've plugged it in and I'm going to click enable. Oh, and then I lost the feed. That's interesting. So it looks like QuickTime, as soon as I enabled it as a device to send data into Ableton, I lost my QuickTime feed. It looks like they're not able to work in unison. I will try rebooting QuickTime Player and see if that makes sense. Is there another way to once the audio is enabled, if there's another way to
Video. As we have worked that laptop.
It's on the NYU network.
But the laptop, know about the phone. But we haven't heard it.
Okay. I'll show the MIDI. And then everyone who's using the app, do you have it installed? Okay. Does anyone still need help installing the app? Okay. I will hold it up and show it to you. Anyways, so I've hit enabled. So this is now a MIDI controller. So I can make my own app with a keyboard or a XY touch, and I can now, in my code, if I'm outputting MIDI, that MIDI runs through the cable into the laptop. So I'm going to close this, closing audio MIDI setup, and I'm going back over to Ableton. And I'm going to live preferences, also might be called settings. And you see in MIDI ports down here, my iPhone is listed. So just like yesterday when we plugged in the MIDI keyboard, the keyboard showed up in this area. Now the iPhone itself is showing up as a MIDI source. So in means data is coming from my iPhone into Ableton. And for this, I've activated, I don't need notes. I'm not sending a clock, so I'm just activating remote. And remote means MIDI CCs, MIDI control changes are coming in, essentially knob turns. And the way that I built the Aurora app is the Planet wants to turn knobs on your on the synth in Ableton. So I've activated remote on MIDI ports. And then in here, so I've got my space sound. I can close this one. And from MIDI in, I can choose, why is that not showing up? It's the same track. Yes. So on MIDI from, I'm choosing my iPhone as the source. So if I had multiple MIDI devices plugged in, they would show up in this dropdown. And to use the Aurora app, I'm using iPhone as my MIDI source in. Now, if you're running the desktop app, one of these MIDI sources will say Aurora. Is that showing up? Great. So choose Aurora. And then for sounds to play, and we're going to switch monitor to in, which means that the notes that are coming in will trigger the sound rather than, maybe that's for notes. Leave it on auto for now because the actual note is coming from the space loop, whereas we want to just be turning the knobs. I'm going to launch my Aurora app. I can show it to the Zoom people as well. So in the Aurora app, I've got these these three panels. So the top panel is the magnometers. So it's electromagnetic activity coming from, it's two satellites. Two of them are NOAA, NOAA satellites. And one of them is observatory in Norway that monitors activity from the aurora lights. And it's an, I've seen it two name labels. One is Tromsø and one is Donbass. I've been to Norway. I haven't been to either of those, but I heard the aurora lights are lovely, and that's why they have the observatory there. So the magnometers, there's a few different buttons underneath of it, and it says on mine, yeah, satellite A, satellite B, observatory, and overall field. And so what it is it's showing the magnometer value from the two satellites, satellite A and B, and then the observatory. And then the overall field is I'm processing them all together and looking for an average. The next, as we scroll down, is magnometer resonance. And again, the idea of resonance comes up. What I'm looking at is, are most of the behavior from the magnometers, are most of them a low frequency, a middle frequency, or high frequency? Are they together or are they separate? So are there some low and some high? So if they're clustered together, that creates resonance, and that's what allows this resonance value to increase. And then the bottom one is X-ray flux. So on the satellites, it also detects X-rays, and it has this pulsing between two different X-rays. And so it's a way to create a waver or a pulsing sound from these satellites. So all of these data streams are different activity in our atmosphere and in space. Any questions about the data feeds, the actual data that's coming in? The way it is coded is I'm hitting some servers that get updated regularly from the satellites, and they're JSON feeds. Your question?
Did delay at all?
Yeah, there's a delay. The update, I don't know the minutes or hours in terms of the individual sources. So what I'm doing is I'm pulling it in and I am increasing the time scale. So it plays through the data points a bit faster because the data points themselves have some space in between them. So I am compressing it. And then when it gets to the end, it loops. And then when there's a new update, it grabs that data set. Yes, Carden. To share the API at the end. I can send you the JSON feeds, absolutely. Yeah, and that's on the help page as well. So I think in the App Store description, it has a link to the support page. And on that support page, it lists all the data sources. So you can access it yourself if you want to build your own Soundifier, which I definitely welcome. Any other questions about the data sources? Anything on Zoom? Okay. All right. Has anyone done MIDI mapping? Has anyone not done MIDI mapping? Okay, great. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We have 10 data streams coming in from the phone right now. And all of them are coming in at the same time. MIDI mapping usually is I have a keyboard or a controller like I had up here yesterday. And I would choose like, hey, I want to control my filter frequency. And so I would choose this. I would go into MIDI map mode, which I'll show you in a second. And when you go into MIDI map mode, Ableton is waiting for some sort of signal, some external MIDI signal to map to the value that I've chosen. So if I went in and I chose frequency filter and I hit Command M, which goes into MIDI mapping mode, all 10 streams simultaneously will try to assign themselves to that single knob. And so you'll see it confused. It keeps trying to reassign who gets to control me. So this is the filter frequency knob is going to be like, is it the magnometers controlling me? Is it the X-ray controlling me? So it keeps getting overwritten over and over and over as all this data is coming in. So in order to prevent that, I have a MIDI mapping mode on the app. And so when you enter MIDI mapping mode on the app, it'll only send one data source at a time. So the one that you want to control the filter knob will be the only one that's being sent in. I'll show that to you and hopefully it makes sense. So in the app, I'm going to choose map, which is the upper right corner. And when I choose map, I can tap around and it's whatever button becomes the highlighted blue. That's the only signal that's coming through this cable right now. And so I'm going to choose what looks interesting right now. Maybe I'm going to choose the observatory. So under magnometers, I'm going to choose the ground observatory in Tromsø. And so now that that's sending in, I'm going into Ableton. And if you can see my cursor here, I'm choosing the frequency filter. So I'm moving it with my mouse. And God, you have to have some good eyes for this. You've got these little, Ableton has the smallest interface. It's got these little black corners. So if I choose resonance, the black corners move to here. When I click that, that means that's the control that's in focus. So when I go over to MIDI mapping, that's what's going to be targeted. So I can go to Options, Edit MIDI Map. So I'm going to be editing the MIDI map in Ableton now. And right away, so you can see down here, do you see that 122? Do you see where my cursor is? Down on the, some dots, okay. And what 122 means is this is sending on MIDI channel 1. And the control change I'm sending is number 22. So that's what's showing up in the frequency filter. Now, what if I change my mind? I still want to control the frequency filter, but actually let's have satellite B change it. So I'm going to, in MIDI map mode, I'm going to select satellite B. And then on the screen, it switched to 121. So now satellite B is controlling my frequency filter. So it's one data stream coming out of the phone into assigning my frequency filter. I know MIDI mapping is like sort of a gibberish topic. Any questions? Like, please ask if it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Are you in mapping mode in your app? And then that's a good question. On your MIDI from, does Aurora show up? And then you click a device, and then you can do Command M, and then nothing. Command M will allow you to get into MIDI mapping. Let's go to live preferences, or it might be called settings. And then go down to the MIDI tab, which is usually the third one down. Do you see Aurora in your MIDI ports? Just select all three. Were they unchecked?
Same.
Yeah, don't do MPE, but let's do track, sync, and remote. And then close that. Let's go back to the knob. Did that work? Voyo, did that work for you? How do you go back to the settings? From settings. You can just close it. Do you want me to look at your screen? Sure. These are action. So you choose a street. So we choose that. It's not when you first launch the app, and choose mapping, it will have this little blurb saying, please choose a source. So nothing will map until you start selecting different sources. Is that working? Bueller? Great. All right. So if you look at mine, the frequency filter, it's moving on its own. I'm not moving it anymore. Do you see that knob turning? So that knob is now being turned by planet Earth. Now, if I play the sound, the frequency is now going up and down because of that source. So I'm now going to take another attribute and assign it to the resonance, which is here. So I'm going to go to my app. I'm going to choose a different source. So I'm choosing magnometer resonance let's do an X-ray because they have a lot of activity. And I'm going to choose the filter resonance, do MIDI mapping. It's 128. I close MIDI mapping. So at this point, I'm sending two signals from the app into Ableton. But if I'm in map mode, it's only sending one. So I have to leave map mode, and that will activate all of the sources coming in. And I've got two of them mapped. So you can see my filter resonance is moving up and down from the X-ray, and the filter frequency is moving based on, I think it's satellite B. And I'm going to create a new track. I'm going to choose space fodder. I'm going to copy and paste the note under space fodder and play that one as well. Yeah. Turn it down so it's not too noisy. It has its own LFO. We could change the frequency based on something from the planet. I'm gonna switch these. I'm gonna put the X-ray on the frequency filter. I think that activity might be more interesting. I'm going back into map mode on the app. And I'm gonna choose frequency filter, go back to MIDI mapping, and choose the X-ray. And then I'm gonna choose satellite, ground satellite, or the average, B. I'm gonna choose satellite B and assign that to the resonance. Do that. So choose this X-ray, turn off MIDI mapping. What is that sound? Oh, the resonance is really low, so that's a bit dull. The other thing you can do is assign it to the volume of the entire track. So I'm going to MIDI map the volume and choose average, or what's this one that's moving quite a bit is high magnometer resonance. So now the volume of the entire sound is going to be moving based on the magnometer resonance. So we've got 3 different sounds here. I'm going to boost it. I'm going to use a utility app. Util effects. So that wavering sound is coming from live X-rays. And then the resonance is changed by a different. So I'm choosing a space sound, and then I'm having these atmospheric signals come in and change those sounds even further. Yeah, sure. Let's take a look. You're using the desktop. Okay, let's go back to Ableton. Sorry, what we have to remote means not first having your own as so you go to yeah, so yeah. Every time you open it up, you have to so I do this. This is good, right? Tracks, remote. Yeah. So first you need an places you have. I think you have something. Yeah. So you have to play some slave here. Oh. At least that's not my boss, but just like click on one of the piano notes. One per hand. Choose not the left. Oh yeah. The little bit. That's what's involved. Yeah. Now, and you hit a note control here. Yes. Here. Must be again.
So now you draw a note that's gonna be like, you know. Yeah. Then. Wait, did you? Oh, you need to, the movement, like, more you need to like. Yeah, now just stretch it like, so it's on. Yeah. I think there's a little, the pink. The purple, one above. Yeah. Then, yes, the only thing is the arrow. You might try. Yeah. Oh, right.
So maybe.
Yes.
It's one of those things where it's like, why?
Yeah.
Like I said,
Okay, so this is.
because it's like.
Oh, you said you need for it for years. You can. Yes. Yeah. Like, yeah.
Yeah, so. Probably will do it. You know.
Yeah.
I'm just usually. Okay, but it's on channel two.
You can switch your speakers.
There's also.
Yeah. It's like touch those.
Yeah.
Except over. Okay, this is cool. Okay, it's kind of settled down. Yeah.
And now.
Yeah, it's like very nice to get you visuals to make yeah, it's just like you guys are saying that.
At least I got some you sleep with the Wi-Fi.
Yeah. We can take that off. So right now. Yeah. No, you'll see it. It's the way to the position. Well, I don't think it's pretty, it's all you need. Like, for the try. One of the things that you get on the back. Yeah, this is like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Did that work for you?
Yeah, it works so much, so well. Thank you. That goes back. So I don't know. I was kind of in my Oh, it's so easy. I do, yeah. All right, I'll be saying around, and we are guessing, not here. Sorry.
Should be.
Okay, yeah, okay, great, thank you.
Audio effects. If you unplug this, we can teach that all into speakers. So let's do that. So
Yeah. Sure, good, but like, I mean. But you can do that for
You have it. I was curious to see. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, some.
But I was able to get, I was able to get a different amp that's gonna be provide yeah, so I have to deal with complex. Probably gonna take this. Yeah. They also don't know, and yes, you can see, so everything is yeah, like to do it, like I had to shot it when I had to, yeah, my.
Yeah, I think there's an Ableton.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I understand the value.
We are that not. So we call like a.
So if you wanted to map something else, you would click on that. And then choose a different parameter. Map one in time.
Yeah.
And then when you're done, or you leave, maybe map a little. Yeah. Sorry, helping folks with individual tech setups. Is everyone getting the app connected in the way they wanted? You know, getting the stream, talking to a parameter in Ableton? Do you need help? I'm happy to help. That's why I'm here.
That's like a science approach to show.
So which.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm just take like.
Yeah, but I used to. So I.
Yeah. Also, this is so. But again, yeah, it does. It's just very free to have.
Any last questions before your next session? I'm hoping this, my goal was to draw us, you know, a single thread from the planet into Ableton. And then as you get more savvy with the app, you can connect more of those threads and create these richer compositions where this planetary data is coming in and controlling all different parts of your Ableton. That's right. That's right. You could send it to Touch Designer or any application that receives MIDI, which is a ton of things. Yeah. So you could do data visualizations instead of sound. Yeah. Yep. Touch Designer is great.
Yeah.
And it can be sent to multiple apps as well. So the MIDI could flow, and the same MIDI could flow into Touch Designer and Ableton. So you could do your visualizations in Touch Designer and sound design in Ableton. Yep.